And so to continue, I have a small burr, a little diamond burr in the drill, and as I was in the previous video, I am very, very carefully going around the shapes of the flowers, leaving plenty of room for the little flowers. And at the moment I'm only kind of outlining the areas, but I will be engraving away the background of the flowers on the leg or on the parts of the little rabbit's body. I will start with the smaller burr and probably take a slightly bigger one to fill in the larger areas. This is called cameo engraving. In other words, where you are leaving in relief the details. Here I've got a slightly bigger burr going at 50,000 miles an hour. Sorry, it does look funny. This particular area of video I've sped up to 250% of normal speed, otherwise you will get very bored. But you can see how I filled in that little background area, and really quite deep. I will demonstrate with a bit of white tack later on, so you can see how deep I am engraving. And what it'll do in the end is produce this quilted effect. This is quite a long, slow process. That's why I've sped up the film quite a bit, and I will jump along. But as you can see, I'm leaving areas, bits of stalk, areas for the leaves and the basic flowers. These are very simple flowers. Really, it doesn't matter what flower. Ideally, I was going to be engraving cherry blossom, but these details are really so small that I'm just keeping it very, very simple. I am leaving an area of blank glass in between the shapes, so you can see the back leg, the front leg, the little feet, and separated from the main part of the body. And it's almost like a cartoon, and quite frankly I am making it up as I go along. So I'm not joining these bits of body together, I'm leaving that original level of glass to separate the pieces. This is, as you can see, a slightly larger diamond burr, probably a little bit too large for that area. It's a little bit clumsy because you don't want the edge of your burr to go over the neat edges of the flower shapes. And so, quite frankly, I really should have taken a smaller burr, but I get a little bit impatient sometimes, as you know. So with this little tail, I have just added a kind of hairy effect. It has a very brief look as it turned over. Let's have a look. Now, very small diamond, very neatly the eye. Okay, filling in the middle of the eye, quite deep, and then the outline of the eye I have left at original level of glass. We'll get back to that shortly. I just thought I'd add a couple of stripy effects for hair. Now I'm still just thinking, what shall I do? And that's when I decided to add a bit of hairy effect, and I know I will do much more of that later, because I wasn't going to do the hair, excuse the pun, I wasn't going to do hair on the rabbit, but then I decided I would in the background. But I'll do that later on with a much finer burr. So in actual fact, you saw there I filled in the background of the face. So from where I had outlined the eye, I had carried on and filled in that area behind the eye, and now the nostril area and going upwards. It is a weird sort of sense of freedom where you are literally just making up what you're going to do as you go along, because there really is no pressure. You know, this is not for a client. Yes, it's for you guys, so you're really important, but it is quite fun and quite funny sometimes just making it up. And I take chances because sometimes that doesn't work. As you know, I have made some monumental errors sometime and had to redo things just because my little plans have not worked. But it doesn't matter, it's all experimental, and this whole theme that I'm using doing at the moment is quite experimental as well. It's just fun. So again, I'm using that rather large burr. The thing is, really, if you are filling in an area, you want to use a smaller burr to make the neat edges, but then the larger burr for the middle, as large as is safely possible, so you don't mess up the edges, and that will be quite efficient. So you can see there's quite a lot of depth in there. The light is picking it up. Now I'm going to show you with a bit of white tack on this face, just pressing it in there. And now you can see there's a little relief of the little hare's face. It's funny that, because I look at it now thinking, yeah, the nose, I could have done something slightly different with the nose, but it doesn't matter. It's a cartoon. It really doesn't matter. You can see what's supposed to be there. Right. I've got here the little Dura white, which I am very, very lightly half toning the middle of the eye to produce an iris effect. So in with a little rubber. Now this rubber, it's not my favorite, but at the moment I've got a load of green rubbers. I'm running really low on my little brown ones, which are my favorites. That's a little brush there. Yeah, I'm not keen on the green one, but anyway, so here I've got a tiny little diamond, which I'm just very lightly showing the edges, the whites of the eyes, and it's not clear enough what's going on. Not really. It looks a little bit blurry. So in actual fact, what am I going to do there? Let's see. I think I'm going to be rubbing. That's what I'm going to do. I am flattening the top of this little rubber because I want a slightly different shape to work with. So now I'll be able to use the side of the top of the rubber, which is a little bit more efficient, turning it around so I can get in there a bit better. And now that eye is a little bit darker, so I can go back to it and do a bit of white again. I'm keeping it at the same level as the original engraving. You can see I put a little shiny dot in there as well. I'm not doing it deep. It's really important that you're simply changing the shades of that eyeball. You can see the eyeball itself is still the same shape, because you don't want to suddenly have a lumpy eyeball because you're engraving too deeply. All I was doing was producing different shading. So here I've got a rubber. Again, this is a rubber I'm not that keen on, because it I don't like it when they break up so much. It's very, very powdery. But it's kind of doing what I wanted to do, and that is to break the surface ever so slightly, and neaten up any little rough edges that might be there. Any little chippy bits are disappearing by using this rubber. So ultimately, when I engrave the little flowers, there will be a little background where you see clear glass. There will be something there, and that's quite important. Otherwise, it just looks like it's got holes in it. And I'm going to hopefully show you now the ever so slight hue. You can see there's a slight hue in those spaces, and that's from that rubber. That's what I want. Now, if you look in the ear, and I'm going to point that to you, I've already done a little experiment. I chickened out. I wasn't going to experiment live, and that's the effect I want, is using a Dura White for the flowers. So a Dura White is quite special. It engraves nicely into the glass, gently, with a very half-tone finish. Now, it's really important that you run this drill very slowly when you're using especially this stone. It's a very soft stone, and you saw what happened in one of my previous videos where I had got carried away listening to the radio, engraving away. My speed was not set as a maximum of slow, and this drill is so quiet, it's so smooth, you can't see it, how fast it's going. And for some reason I didn't even twig, I just didn't get it, and then the burr got so hot and the top of it went flying across the screen. So yeah. So what I do usually is set the speed of my drill, and obviously not all drills can do that, but I set it to a maximum of about 15,000 RPM. So that gives you a rough idea. I keep it under that speed while I'm using this stone. Now this part of the video I have got set at 200% of normal speed, not 250. This is at 200%, so it's double the speed. Now you can see what I'm doing here quite clearly. I am just producing very simple little petals, but leaving some background. It's very rough and ready. It's not super accurate or anything like that, but you get the idea. So it's not, they're slightly deep, but not as deep as the background that I have engraved away. So it is producing, from the other side, when you're looking at the right side, it will be that somewhat quilted effect. See, it's a different, really different kind of effect. It's rather fun. You just see part of the eye on the other side there. Now I decided to just bring these petals in a little bit further. And this is another rubber of mine. A nice hard black rubber, again just flying over the middle of the flowers just to make it that extra little bit dark. Now in this clip you really can see how deep it is with the light coming from the side there. And I have got a tiny rat's tail. It wasn't functioning very well, needed to have the top flattened a little bit to get to some fresh diamond. So here I've got an extremely tatty old stone which I'm spinning against the head of it ever so gently, and it just takes it down slightly because there's diamond dust going down the sides. So remember I mentioned earlier adding a little hairy effect in the background, and here you can see that is exactly what I'm doing, paying attention to the direction that the hair grows roughly in each area, and taking it slightly over the edges to give the effect of being quite a hairy rabbit. Interestingly, looking at those petals that I've got there that I had used the Dura White to create, I probably will go back over those because I can see they've got tiny little white marks that you don't really see until it's wet, and I'm not that keen on that. I will make sure they're nice and smooth, but don't worry, As you do more and more glass engraving, you pick up that sort of thing. It's very small, but it's I notice these things, and I would prefer the little petals to be smoother. Right, how are we doing? There you can see it's starting to look like a very fluffy bunny. Most peculiar type of engraving this. Can't say I've really done it before. Bit of fun. Now I've got another very old rat's tail. It's probably about half the length of what it originally was. That's how much I have used this. And I know that it was a very good one, and so I've just taken the top down so I can flick over the edges with ease. Little bit tricky because you've got to be quite determined, because of course it's very deep on the edges, so it can send your drill in the wrong direction quite easily, so you've got to be a little bit tough with it. Now plopped some water on there to put the whiskers in. Now, because of all the depths, that makes the whiskers particularly painful to do. I'm going to go back to those other whiskers with another burr later on to neaten them up. Here I've taken this burr and I'm just doing 3 little dots in each flower. Thereabouts anyway. They are actually quite deep because I've made this burr particularly sharp now on the edges. You can see quite clearly now, looking at those flowers quickly in the body, the petals of the flowers have got those white areas. That I will probably after the video smooth out, because I know that I did not smooth them out before the end of this video. It just means very carefully going again with the Dura White. So here I've got the hair in the way, my hair. No, yeah, I think I did it. Not happy with those whiskers, but a little bit tricky when you've got so many depths to plough through. Anyway, signature on the side and the date. And that'll be our little paperweight. Pretty much done. So the year of the rabbit, 2023. I see there's a little flower there by its tail, which I left out. That's got to have its 3 little dots put in. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. Something very different. Thanks for watching, guys. See you soon. Bye for now.